Using this second, I want to say that you guys should watch the stream of myself with Yuri Sapochnikov. He's the head of Energy Project, the institute that is planning nuclear power stations, including Khmelnytsky power station that you brought up here. So he understands all the details, and he was yesterday here discussing in detail and explaining why they'll be building at least for 5 to 6 years the first reactor, and then 4 more years the next one. And this is absolutely a charade, and that's being presented and drummed as some effective project.
Note how the Ministry of Energy reacted to the fact that they refused to transfer any projects that they started since 1945, which they do have details for in this institute, which are needed during the reconstruction, where we all understand there'll be a lot of money siphoned, so that the ministry can give it to their subcontractors and use these ways to siphon money away. So this institute, which we understand is the last fortress that has all these engineers who can build such complex projects as nuclear stations. First, the reservation was lifted from this institute, and then they got 52 notes to draft 52 people from this institute. And then we'll be in a complete energy shithole. They'll be asking questions in the society. Where are the experts who can make this puzzle, who can make another nuclear reactor, and we won't have them. This is complete foobar. Let's place a question wider, guys. How do you call people who are attached to the land and cannot leave by the birthright? Oh yeah, they're the serfs. So who are male citizens of Ukraine today? Exactly that, serfs, 21st century. You're an adult person, you have some plans in your life, and then your government tells you, by the fact of being born in this territory, you cannot go anywhere, first of all, and second, we can draft you, and we can make you kill people or die, regardless of other ideas, plans, and convictions you have in your life. This is falling down to the level before 1861, when the peasantry was liberated from serfdom. This is a serious question that is not being discussed. What are we expecting from the government that sends 51 writs to such an institution? This is complete lawlessness, and people in the country are not reacting. They're either afraid or beaten up or hypnotized, and they're just not even reacting to scandals like that. And this is realizing Biden's principle in politics. The only thing that can save us is real politics. Audit of the country. What can we do? Here's our real capabilities. Here's our capabilities that we don't have, we need to acquire. What can we do to get there? What can we do to get real money to enforce the politics that we want to, or at least fill it up to 50%. Because that unsupported politics for 33 years, that brought us to the pit where we are now, where you have, let's say you're a doctor, you have a patient in front of you, you're telling him, you have a fever, you need to take medicine, patient is not reacting. How do you call it? It's catatonic patient. Right, Alexey, these statements by power and authorities, they're making these statements once and time and again, and the masses are in a complete disorientation. They're not even reacting to new statements. And when even, I think it'll be officially declared that negotiations have started, I don't think there'll be a reaction in the society. Right, I think we reached some absolute point in this. Society that is pushed to such a level, to such a degree, in such a horrible place, doesn't even react to the president who says, okay, we're now making 180 degrees and going different way. Because normal society would be questioning its president. Wait, if we are ready to sign peace accords, why are we doing mobilization? How are we going to sign peace accords? What are the terms? They're not even reacting to that. And this is the culmination of his rule. They're now telling about a complete turn in their politics, and society doesn't respond. Just zero. How do you manage such society? Alexey, in connection with this, another interesting point I want to make. I think Yermak talked about that first, before Zelensky. Right, it was Yermak and Kuleba. They sent the second-tier speakers first, and now Zelensky came out twice, and nobody notices him. This speech is not on the main media sites, only Telegram channels posted a brief message without commentary, especially the ones related to Zelensky's government. Okay, what I wanted to say here, Alexey, is that if they're talking about this in relation to the second summit of peace that will happen likely somewhere in Saudi Arabia, that means what? That implies that peace talks track is being actively worked. And on the background of that trash that we've seen today with the presidential debates in the United States, what peace track can it be? This summer? Autumn? When is the time frame? I think if we're going to the topic of peace plan, they'll probably be signing peace accords closer to the elections in the United States, because each candidate needs to present something, right? Look what Trump is saying. He said a very sharp formula there: I will stop this war before I will officially become a president. So between the 4th of November and inauguration in January. That's what he implies, that I will not be inaugurated yet, but I will be able to put an end to it. In his opinion, it should be over somewhere in November, December. We understand the logic that we will not be entering or won't be going entirely through the winter period, because with our current energy system state, if you continue beating it up, it'll be a very wild and frozen country here next to Europe. And if the guys from the president's office would be calculating well, I would have done one more thing. I would have stopped this war now in summer, then I would declare new elections, and I would have left before winter, leaving the country to a new government. And I could have said, look, I was at the beginning of this war, I did not leave. I carried us through, and yeah, we do have losses. They're significant, perhaps you did not know, but they're big. And I've done what I could, and we're stopping this war now, putting an end to it. You can write a book about me as about Churchill, but now I'm not interested in all that reconstruction. That'll be technocrats doing that instead of me. That's not my game, so you guys enjoy rebuilding it. I'll be retiring and traveling the world. That would have been a logical move on their behalf. Will they be grasping at powers? I don't know. Everybody on the West are thinking that Zelensky has maybe half a year at maximum. There are some optimists who are saying immediate future, and there are others who are saying after the next peace summit. There is a group that says, okay, it probably will last till the end of the year at least. But the logic is that they wanted to raise some money for counteroffensive and more weapons and mobilize people and win over Putin somewhere in some parts of the front, and then enter into the negotiations phase. But the West is not really giving that much money. They're giving some, but in portions. They're giving some long-range missiles, okay, some long-range weapons, but they're not giving enough to supply the new brigades that are being formed. Mariana Bezuglaya made a good publication today on this. So counteroffensive is not going to fly. Now they're talking about peace. And main news that was discussed during the summit, I was talking to people who were attending it, was the Putin's plan, which was not realistic. And now in the news that Putin brought up another suggestion. It is rather interesting. Perhaps it deserves a different stream. Apparently Russia is not presenting very soft terms, even softer than Istanbul agreements had. This was injected into the media, into the network. I'm checking it through my sources how realistic the data is, but apparently Russia is suggesting to withdraw from Kherson and Zaporozhye and to continue trading more, and even allow for 350,000 army on the Ukrainian side as the starting point. In Istanbul, we started with 150. So it seems like both sides are talking about it now. But the fact is that the president is not being heard, and I think this is the final sentencing verdict on the Ukrainian Republic. And if some years later, and 10 years, 20 years, we'll be writing memoirs and making movies about how it was, I would be insisting that the editor make a note of this specific moment when Zelensky declared 2 times about going to peace negotiations and he was not heard, because this is a complete disconnect with the society. When he was not heard, you can say that indeed there is no connection. On some inertia, he'll probably continue running the country to finish this process, and then there'll be a big question: what else can be done with these remnants of Ukraine, with no budget, with a ton of landmines, with a lot of radical elements of society who will never forgive our president and power, and will be trying to prove to everybody that those people in power are traitors, and you'll have to do something with those who are drastically disagreeing with you. Now the question, where did they come from? Where these people originate from? Well, because you were pumping them hysterically for 2 years with a propaganda of that flavor. And Ukraine will be torn apart like that transmission box being shifted to the rear
while driving full speed. So we are in a precarious situation, and this is realizing of that principle in politics. Heightened expectations, declarations that are very liked by the public that will prevail, the eternal enemy will trump them, and then oops, and guys, we have nothing to fight with. Oh, we have no money, we have big losses, our energy systems are destroyed, we will not survive the winter, let's go back. If they were wise people, they would be accusing myself of everything. They would be saying that Arestovich lulled the society, all the guilt and blame was on him. He was creating artificial inflated expectations since the beginning, and he birthed this trend. And in reality, we were always ready for difficult compromise. It was an element of political trade. Look at the losses we had, and now we need to make some serious decisions. And all those scumbags who are running around still talking about big victory, they're working for Putin because they want to kill a lot more Ukrainians and lead Ukraine to the Paraguay option. We found it within ourselves to recognize reality. We are heroes who manage to look truth in the face, and that would be, I think, a tonality that will emerge in the shortest time without any pre-pumping and pre-conversion. They'll immediately switch gears, and now all those who are talking about Borders of 91 will become scoundrels, and everybody will go a different direction. And you and I will still be the scapegoats anyway, because it's convenient for them. Ukrainians need to understand simple thing, that this principle should leave Ukrainian politics. Declarations not supported materially should disappear. Things that are not supported, that we do not have resources for, like joining NATO, joining EU, destroying Russia, going back to the borders of 91. It's time for us to stop living in credit. We should calculate what we have and try to survive on the monies that we make, and perhaps earn some money somewhere. This is what will save Ukraine. You can call it Trump principle, you can call it realpolitik, whatever, but in this Game of Thrones that will be happening in the next 10 to 15 years, only realpolitik will save us. Continuously and logically adhered to. When Franco in Spain realized that after the war of 36-39, while Hitler and Mussolini were really working on him to get Spain to join Second World War, he managed to stay out of the fray, held the Spain till 1975, returned it to the king, gave up his post, and look, today Spain is a member of NATO, member of EU, well-developing country that many people like to live in. And he had enough courage to recognize that Spain should not be joining the global war, the world war, after 3 years of civil war. And if they had same people like we have, or like Biden is, they would be telling a lot of stories that evil needs to be punished and we need to, and there would probably be not much left from Spain after the conflict. And I don't know where the country would be today. So Ukraine has a lot of chances in the future clashes to not allow a hot war to enter its territory if we'll be smart in our politics. But we need to completely denounce the principles of earlier politics and reform our elites and focus on the realpolitik principle. And the main aspect here is to replace a narrow project with a large polyphonic, symphonic project for Ukraine. If we don't do that, we'll be done with. Ukraine from Kievan Rus to the Soviet Union, even Austro-Hungarian Empire, was never a narrow project. It tried to be that twice, 1917, 1920, and 2014, 2024. Both times it was a catastrophe. What are we not getting here? Again, these are people who are declaring their principles absolutely demagogues, sucked out of their finger or someplace. And all these national institutes of memory, Portnikovs, Poroshenkovs, Samovirs, they're ready to destroy Ukraine as long as they achieve their goals. And the result of their actions would be the destruction of Ukraine. There'll never be a Ukraine of 1991. We already lost a bunch of territories and will continue to dwindle if we follow this course. And they're trying to destroy the polyphonic structure that it was. And the borders of 91 were inherited by a polycultural, polynational to the white project. That's what we were back then. And they are ready to concentrate more narrow electoral interest and to make sure that they can keep and hold power, because that's easier for them to manage in this angle. And they're playing with society
growing up these groups and these views in there. On the trauma of war and trauma of unsuccesses, Bogdan Grebenyuk, one smart man, calculated that we have more than 10 memorial days. The day about the Tatars, the day about Crimea, the day about a lot of other things. And we don't even have a day of victory. In our federal holidays, we have 10 days of grievance and not a single day of victory. This is the angle of a narrow understanding of our history, narrow understanding of Ukraine's path. And this is the Second Republic. There's software, the inner workings of Second Republic of Ukraine is fully formed on the worst outcomes of Soviet Union, suppressing different thought, suppressing different trends in the society that don't match the leading power, corruption of ideology through the government, corruption government through ideology, and there are no real projects. Oleg recently published a good post asking, tell me a good project for the future of Ukraine. I'm thankful to him that he remembered about mine, the fifth, as I call it. But he couldn't bring any other. He couldn't find anything. Right, nothing is being discussed, indeed. You can call it whatever, but there is no other view. There is no other vision for the country. What are we thinking about? Behind that wave of propaganda and the messages about blown-up tank, somebody maimed in the subway, with all condolences to the maimed and kudos to those who hit the tanks. We need to make that. I don't want to go cynical here, but what I'm trying to say is that we have lost the ability to put serious questions as a society in front of us. Romanenko's pool is doing that. Even overseas, they're seeing that. They actually, I heard that. They said nobody is doing anything there except for Romanenko's pool. So that you guys understand, you are in the analytical search systems, different pools there in the West, which monitor the situation on the ground. So they do notice your group. And what they're trying to say is that we lost the ability to put serious questions and find serious answers. We'll continue to adhere to Biden's principle. Beautiful slogans, unsupported in any material fashion. And remember, like Kanievsky wrote, in the memes that are circulating, of course nobody was going to do anything. We never wanted and could achieve such a reality, and everybody knows that, but our poor people have been dumped by propaganda. So we have several tasks, as I see, in front of us, to make sure that in the next decade of wars, Ukraine never participates in a hot war again. This is a colossal task that needs solving. Ideally, we need to create a system of collective security, but I'm afraid we will not be able to create a permanent one. At least there'll be some temporary. So we'll need to make sure we can prepare for the next round, or at least avoid, perhaps if we're more lucky, avoid any of the fight. Spain is a good example. It showed us that it doesn't have to join the big fight. The second task is to replace the narrow project with the wide one. This is the main task, because otherwise we'll be facing a catastrophe and the country will be shrunk to 9 Western districts, or maybe 5 or even 3. And the third, we need to make sure the country is people-centric. And these tasks are very interrelated. I wrote a big post about that today, because when you attack your people, when you send conscription to your best experts, this is the culmination of disconnection of government, of state from people. Today's state is the enemy of the people. It is exploiting them, it is holding them as serfs, it is killing them, it's treating them as human garbage, and is refusing them basic human rights according to Ukrainian constitution. By the way, it is a day of our constitution today. And that needs to be replaced. Not the Ukrainian government at large, but the Second Republic. We need to replace it with a new one that is more people-centric. We need to bet on more creative forces of our people and let them grow. These principles are interconnected again. If we turn the government to face the people, we'll involuntarily switch to the wider project. If we switch to the wider project, we'll give more opportunities to people and be able to either avoid the war or prepare for it better. And of course, we need to start with turning the state towards people. That's the first step. Super important that they start hearing each other, that important questions would be discussed, that there would be a real competition of people and projects and not some corruption support for the projects that seem to be interesting and electorally suitable in the next period. And then that would help us replace narrow project with the wide, Ukraine as a symphony, new Ukraine that will be talking about the system of collective security, preventing a second round of big war in Europe. We can compete with each other as much as we like, but without hot actions, hot wars. Or get to the next round with a well-prepared military complex, its own arms, and international military cooperation and union treaties with different countries and well-motivated people, because our society has lost its motivation. We're repeating that situation of the early of the 20th century, when 5,000 Bolsheviks were marching towards Kiev. We had 1.5 million of people with experience of First World War and several tens of thousands officers in Kiev who could have completely dismantled those Bolsheviks if any of them wanted to fight, if they were motivated. But they did not trust their government so much that they refused to participate, and they didn't come out to defend. Later they were executed by the Bolsheviks, but still, they refused to fight initially. And instead of them, there were 300 naive students defending Kiev. That was the culmination of that politics. And now we have the global situation like that of the 21st century. When people are losing their motivation, the values are devaluating in Ukraine. Nobody understands why they even want to. The white masses don't understand why to invest in Ukraine. Some people do, right? But that's an issue on a global scale in our country. And we're coming to an option, unfortunate one, when perhaps there is aid, there is arms, but there is no motivation. And I was telling in the stream of the War Diary that now on one of the parts of the front, 6 battalions are refusing to fight and only one of them is fighting. And they're fighting in a utilization mode. 50 people get thrown into to replace the dead ones or wounded ones, and the next day half of them are dead or wounded. So it's a grinder. And it's not only soldiers who are refusing to fight, that people on the level of battalion commander are refusing to. The officers refusing to. And without real questions and real changes in these 3 tasks that I mentioned, face the people, switch narrow project to the wide one, and reignite collective security systems to prevent use of armed conflicts in conflict resolution. And or parallel preparedness for the second or third rounds of this war. Nothing will happen. Ukraine will be no more. We will not be able to survive if we don't address these. And what I'm appealing to is that Biden's principle, we need to make sure that doesn't put us to grave. The principle of director is the principle of Petlura, Denychenko, and the like. Let's deal with realpolitik. What do we have in reality? Remember how Chidaluma was saying about the crash of Skoropadsky project. This is the real copy of what's happening in Ukraine. Skoropadsky makes a decision that he needs to unite with Cossacks who are fighting with Denikin, with his project of Great Russia, and with Bolsheviks, to join into a single unified anti-Bolshevik front, that they'll be building a federative state with Cossacks republics. And Ukrainian society gone mad is accusing him that he wants to build a Great Russia with the white army. So they're translating his idea 180 degrees differently. He's saying we are against the whites and against the Bolsheviks. We're forming a new front because neither of those want independent Ukraine and they want a Great Russia. And therefore will join with Cossacks, who are ethnic Ukrainians. There were 2 Ukrainian armies, actually more, but 2 big ones. And they're ethnic Ukrainians mostly in them. There were a lot of intelligence people as well, people with education, and they were helping them with arms already, so they were already in agreement about military action. And he was suggesting a bigger project of the country that could have changed the destiny of the world. And Denychenko and Petlura, they accuse him that of something completely different, that he is now scheming with the whites to restore big Russia. And of course, he is an old white Russian army, Tsar army officer, and he loses his power. And do you know who was responsible for his media communications, as we call it today? There was some Dmitry Dontsov, an interesting person, who was the head of Ukrainian telegraph agency under Skoropadsky at that time. And he was doing anything but informing people, anything but providing strategic communications, as we call it today, or qualitative communications from government to people and explaining what's happening and why these politics are. He was building projects to mark the borders. He was intriguing. He was writing interesting books, but he failed to fulfill his exact obligations. Do you guys recognize the typical model of behavior with the government? That's exactly what's happening today. The power, even if sometimes it's making positive steps, it fails to properly explain them. And society does not understand that, frays away and tries not to look deeper, and doesn't even react to the president's statement about the turn in the war.
You done with the briefing, right, Alexey? Yeah, as I'm saying, Second Ukrainian Republic is done. There's nothing that can save it. And that's why I declared that I'm not loyal to a Second Republic anymore. I'm not going to take any responsibility in the information sphere for that Second Republic. For the third, yes, sure. For the second, no. And that's what you suggested, by the way, Yura, right? Let's remove Arestovich from the media sphere for a month and see what happens. This is partial withdrawal. I will come back to this topic when or if there'll be a serious turn or serious discussion about a Third Republic. And I think that these cracks that start to creep on the facade of the Second Republic, and it'll crumble soon, the immediate turn, rapid turn to peace will actually break that building, as I see it. And it will birth interesting events, and I can give you a couple of samples. To one of the streams of Burmeister, one of his most vile opponents came into the commentary and said, beautiful lecture about Heidegger. He's also a philosopher, a specialist in Heidegger, and he's saying that before there were attacks and confusion between us, but now I actually do support your views on this guy. So this was somewhat obscure apology issued. And there's also a philosopher, Alexey Arestovych, an old friend of Burmeister. He's a Ukrainian translator who wrote his work as diploma on Pushkin back in the day. For the whole life he was quoting Galich, playing him on a guitar and in Russian. And then he became part of the Ukrainian intelligentsia, which got scared and jumped ship and was attacking everything Russian and Russian speaking. And he was the main Bulgakov researcher. And attacking everything Russian, he kind of veered away from it. But yesterday he published another statement saying that I'm not going to give Bulgakov's Master and Margarita to Russia because this is an anti-imperial novel. He immediately gets attacked by his used-to-be new friends on the ideological camp of Ukrainian language only, and they start to attack each other, they start to devour each other, and some of them start to get certain elations or cognitions. All of a sudden, right, Bulgakov should not be given away to Russia. And let's issue apologies to this guy. He actually had something wise to say. So something is happening. These guys in their collective unconsciousness, they are feeling something. And not everything is so simple, is actually starting to bubble up. And the more it bubbles up, the more the building of the Second Republic will start to collapse. And if there'll be not a full reflection on things happened, but at least some understanding of perhaps we were a little too brash, we shouldn't be maybe so quick or so fierce. We should have seen things in more detail. And remember, not long ago before that, there was a recommendation to Ukrainian media to not really call Russians orcs, to not use cuss names in publications. So these are the little bells. The society is getting tired of themselves. Remember that genius conversation between Stirlitz and the general in the train? I think this quote should be in every federal establishment and at school. Fanatics can prevail, but they'll never be able to hold the victory for long, because they'll get tired of themselves rather quickly. And of course, fanatics will give the last battle. You should read the discussion, seriously, Yuri. Everybody is in there, and there's a little civil war happening. Well, look, where the camera is showing here. Yeah, show it here. Western canon. Harold Bloom. The books of the Western canon for the last several hundreds of years, starting with the Gilgamesh epos. And there are 28 authors that are part of the canon, and then he expands it to 528 works of literature, of which supposedly Western literature and idea is comprised of. Amidst them are Chekhov, Gogol, and Bulgakov, Master and Margarita, right? Well, listen, Oleg, I recently had a chance to go to a bookstore in Europe, and it's an interesting view. People are buying things dedicated to Russian literature. It is being purchased actively. It's difficult even to get to that shelf. You know, there are different publications like Oxford Short Reviews, and a lot of people are trying to study Russian, trying to read books, a lot of attention to the culture, because it poses fundamental questions and is looking for answers to them. And our localized jumps is only seen as wilderness attacking civilization. Look at the statement of Lyshko, Minister of Health. Ukraine is facing a global deficit of doctors in the next few years. According to him, that deficit will completely cripple the country's ability to provide medical service by 2030. They don't talk about the methods to solve it, but I want to put the question wider. What other specialists are not being in deficit? I know we have a deficit of brain matter, but yeah, I think we are a society of deficit. Indeed, we are a society of deficit. Just Soviet deficit became global and total deficit, having somehow evolved over the last 33 years. Right, we should be broadcasting the Dog's Heart movie on all the TV channels. Bulgakov wrote everything there. Exactly. The wreckage is in your head. Well, okay, guys, don't forget to click the like button. I think it's a good moment to remember about that. Listen, we are creating these troubles for ourselves. Why are you poor? Because you're stupid. Why are you stupid? Because you're poor, right? And we reviewed the steps. We gave the diagnosis. You and I will have an interesting work in the near future when these cracks will start growing, and they'll be more considering, hey, we probably should have brought the Russian literature back. We'll need to be amplifying that signal. We'll need to make sure we'll be calling out these issues. These are the trends. This is the cure. This is where we need to look. Otherwise, we'll have these consequences. Not too many viewers know, but very often I'm being asked, why you always bring up the facts about attacks on Russian literature? Give us some facts. Well, here are some facts. In our academic works, we are prohibited from quoting Soviet and Russian sources. How do you think that turned out for us? In this regard, most of our plagiarism is now coming from doctors and candidates' PhD's works from Russia, because our search system is ignoring them. And that's what happened with the leader of the philosophic department of Taras Shevchenko Institute, the place that expelled Burmestiev because of relentless attacks on him. And his students are now catching their own professors on plagiarizing the work of philosophy department of Moscow University, and he actually used that to defend his own PhD in Ukraine. So they're just abusing that we blocked Russian sources, and he is now using Russian sources because that's easy. This is the shadow process, which always exists somewhere. That's what happens in Ukraine. We make beautiful declarations, and then we steal. We bring beautiful slogans, and then we go to Russia and copycat their works. This is the core of our new history, unfortunately, of that Second Republic. And this is being brought to light through examining this shadow process, through conducting real audit and changing the principal substance of the project for a different one. That's how you attack it. Let's get to work, comrades. Yeah, the goals are clear. We just need to do a lot of work. These are our July thesis for the country. I want to state here, guys, that the main thing is to keep this process manageable, because otherwise we're running a risk of repeating the situation of 1917, 1919, when the country collapsed and the flow of communists and Bolsheviks did change our history for the next 100 years. And our statehood has failed at that moment. So we have to be more careful this time. Right, guys, do you see that? Our viewers just sent me a meme. Why is our master so harsh to us? Well, because we are the race of warriors and we have an unbreakable spirit. That's the real picture of our current politics. We have to be serfs in the country, and then we have all the propaganda telling us otherwise. Sorry, I just couldn't hold myself. Very matching. Right, this is a good constitution picture to our day of constitution today. So, for you guys, and Oleg and Alexey, does the day matter? Does it mean anything? Because for me, it's really an empty day. It is not supported by anything, by neither government actions or relationships in society. This was some golem built on the sand. It was birthed in the 90s, and it failed to be developed into anything alive. So today, the Day of Constitution sounds almost like an attack on all people who want to live in the state that respects laws, respects rights, and has some future for its citizens. But again, this only outlines the scope of work that we have to build a third republic, that we have to make sure that it is human-centric, that it is facing its citizens, where people would be above all. I will never get tired of repeating it. And where the day of Constitution will be a real holiday, because people will understand that Constitution is not just some paper that you can bring only when it's needed, but it doesn't do anything when police is breaking your back. But when people understand that the state is actually watching the Constitution and execution of it, and is punishing those who try to circumvent it, and is creating the right relations in the society. So that Constitution and that state we definitely need, and I think it'll be our third republic. Well, like, we also have another example. Whatever topic you take, there is another example of schizophrenia of the Second Ukrainian Republic. Our president is the guarantor of constitutional rights, right? Could you name me one single mechanism that is written in Constitution or in any other law that he can use to guarantee Constitution? He doesn't have mechanisms. So we again create a document and principles that are not provided with any resource behind it. And he is carrying historic responsibility for that, for executing the Constitution, but he has no levers to manage it. And each of our presidents, meanwhile, is doing a lot of things to actually violate the Constitution. Denis Grachovsky, one of the good thinkers about current problems, he wrote a good post today. There are two books that can affect the future of a 14-year-old and the way he thinks: Lord of the Rings and Constitution of Ukraine. One is an infantile fairy tale that has no connection with reality. Reading this book can lead to emotional immaturity, escapism, and inability to solve your problems in the future in adult life. The second is a book about orcs and hobbits. Right, curtain. And you know, in Facebook, I was also checking what people are posting. There are a lot of sad posts that it turned into a symbol of violated or perversion in regards to constitutional goals. And there are a lot of them. You know, I start to think, Oleg, when society will actually feel shame. A lot of adult ladies and gentlemen who are continuously being hit on their heads with that constitution and who are forced to use it as toilet paper, when will they actually acknowledge that things are bad, that the system they are prompting, they are supporting, is destroying them? Let's acknowledge the reality that the king is naked. We actually need the same shock that America is now feeling from debates of Biden and Trump. Perhaps we'll see that in our debates here when our candidates will have a chance to discuss things. But we need to say that the king is naked. Kyiv is full of different vehicles, right? People are driving Infinities and some other models. They are learning languages, they're donating things, they're posting slogans in the social media. But today, in the day of Constitution, any of you, with all your businesses, with all your aspirations, can be just trampled over. Power agencies can just put you in jail or throw you to fight in the war and take away your livelihood and everything. Nothing changed. That document that needs to be the backbone of a system of relations in the country, it is being used as the food rag or as a toilet paper. What is to celebrate? A total crash of the whole idea and the logic of what's happening? When we as a nation will start feeling shame for our Second Republic, for that system of relations that we built, and that we're making a story of being so fantastic when it is not. It is a machine to oppress and destroy Ukrainians. The Second Republic, that's it. All right, well, dear viewers, don't forget to click the like button. I think that stream turned out to be good. And a lot of questions about Arestovich were answered after his other 3 interviews with Bykov and 2 other well-known ladies. I think we closed those topics. Second, Alexey has a fundraiser for 93rd Brigade, I think. Yes, we're fundraising for UAVs. I think they asked for 560,000. We already gathered 380. Let's conclude that one. We have done more usually. And Khomyak, thank you for participating in our stream. Thank you for heroically supporting our discussion. Arestovich, thank you for working historically and heroically for, I don't know who you work for, Next Republic, right? Thank you for your help. And I know now how we're called. Thank you for Romanenko's pool. That was a new descriptor. I haven't heard that one before. Yeah, there's a system of monitoring, Yuri, that they use in NATO and in Europe and in the United States that does the analysis of the ideas and things being discussed. And some good people are suggesting me that Romanenko's pool is actually outlined as a separate group in that system. And this is the only group where they think the information is rather truthful. A lot of other groups have too much fluff. Well, thank you. Today I have something to report to my wife, that despite the crisis of middle age, I can come back and say, listen, I am now being known and being read. Right. Well, thank you, gentlemen. Thank you so much again. Have a good weekend. Peaceful sky over your head. Have some electricity, which is also important. And make sure you do listen to whatever announcements are happening to not get stuck in the elevators and other places. And thank you so much, Alexey Arestovych and Oleg Khomyak, for participating in our stream. Hugs to all. Goodbye.